This is the Voice of Wichita Falls.
And welcome to the Voice of Wichita Falls on this Townsquare Media station. I'm Mike Hendren. Henry Florsheim here in the studio with me. Good morning, Henry.
Good morning.
How you doing?
I'm good.
Well, actually, kind of afternoon, depending on when you're listening to this.
Right.
Could be morning, afternoon.
They're going to watch this online, too. So
yeah.
3 in the morning, right?
It could be any time you're seeing this. So we've been talking very extensively about the bond propositions here on this program. And we need to acknowledge here, we're recording this before Election Day. Okay, early voting is now ended. We had about 7,300 early voters, is what we're hearing. Is that right?
7,730.
7,730.
I think, yeah.
Sorry, I thought it was 73. Okay.
Either way, that's a big number. That's more people than voted in the entire jail election last year, almost twice.
Yeah, that's a lot of people. So it's the turnout's been very strong. Election Day is happening on the day that, if you're listening to this program on NewsTalk 1290, you're hearing it on Election Day.
So go vote.
May 5th. So go vote. If you're hearing it on one of our sister stations, 92.9 NIN, 106.3 The Buzz, or 102.3 The Bull, you're hearing it the day after the election. So I hope you voted. But one way or another, I hope you took part in the elections and that you were able to get out and exercise your right to vote, whether you voted for or against. But one way or another, the sun shall rise again. Everything's going to be okay one way or another. But I don't know about you, Henry, but I have talked to a lot of people, and you've talked to probably 100 times as many people as I've talked to. How many live forums have you done on this so far?
I think I ended up giving about 45 presentations to different civic groups, companies. We had the Falls Future Forum that we put on to over 600 Wichitans that were interested in this. Yeah. I even had some meetings at people's houses. I met with a group of homeschool families twice, 2 different groups. And so there was just a whole lot of interest. This was a very complicated election because first off, you had 7 different choices to make. Secondly, a lot of the propositions had multiple projects within it, some as many as a dozen projects within it. And so it was very difficult for people to really get what was going on without researching the info or having somebody come talk to them about it. So the one thing I wanted at the very start of this deal was to make sure that we had a good educated vote and that we had a high turnout no matter what the result was. Because when you have a low turnout, it's hard to even say that, I guess you decide by not voting. That an issue is not important to you, but I really wanted a good message from the community, and no matter what the results ended up, like, we got that. The turnout was fantastic.
Right. Of the groups that you talked to, and especially those where you sat down very one-on-one, like with the homeschool families, what kind of feedback were you getting? What was the response you were getting out of people?
For the most part, the response I was getting in general was that, yes, we need to do something to move this community forward. In person, I got very, very little feedback that told me, no, we've got to vote no against everything because keeping our taxes where they are is more important than moving this community forward. There were differences of opinions on every single proposition. You could find yes voters and no voters for every one of them. For every downtown advocate I find, there was one that's saying, well, I don't get it. We need jobs. And for all the propositions. Prop D was obviously going to be the hardest one to pass for several reasons. Then alternatively, on Facebook is where you see a ton of negative feedback. But again, we had a lot of supporters as well. And so it's just been a really interesting dynamic because there's so many complicating factors to this, so many projects for people to evaluate. And if you're voting no for something, it's very easy to just say, well, vote no because taxes are bad. I don't want them any higher. The vote yes crowd, you had to really understand what's going into these different things. And so that was one of the reasons we didn't get out and walk neighborhoods, because it would have been impossible to train enough people to be able to answer all the questions that I've gotten throughout this campaign. And so instead, we just focused on our advertising, our in-person presentations, and social media and that sort of thing. And it's just been really encouraging. I had a lot of fun during this campaign. I got beat up a lot, and that's fine. I can handle that. But I've had a lot of fun just because there's so much energy right now to try and move the city forward no matter what we end up doing to make that happen.
Yeah. One of the questions that, or one of the comments that I've heard from a lot of people is, well, the cost of living here Well, the cost of living here is actually very affordable. As a matter of fact, there was a study, a survey that was out, last week. I think you had posted about it.
I did.
I'd posted about it. It was from niche.com, I believe, was the website. And this is one of these companies that they do these surveys and these polls. They've been doing this for about 15 or 18 years, something like that. Been around a long time. And we ranked number 8 on the list in terms of cost of living. I think overall, there were several factors they looked at: crime, schools, cost of living, different factors. I think there were 6 or 8 different factors they looked at, and we came out number 115 overall out of 228 cities, I believe, that were surveyed. But number 8 in terms of cost of living. And, some of the other cities on the list were very close in population to us. Some were double our size, but most were within, anywhere from 2,000 to 20,000 being the same size as Wichita Falls. So it was a pretty close to an apples to apples comparison in most cases.
That's right. And we also came in number 20th and out of the 228 in best cities to buy a house in.
Yeah.
And then we were in the top 50 in best places to retire.
Yeah.
And so going back to the cost of living one, if you think about it, taxes are just a small part of the cost of living somewhere. And you've got to factor in so many other things, including housing and healthcare and just groceries and everything that you buy, gas prices. And so although there's talk here about property taxes going up if any of the propositions pass, at the end of the day, this is still a much lower cost of living area than most other places around the country.
It is.
And it's good to see us continue to get that recognition that we get every quarter when the normal cost of living index comes out. Yeah.
It is a very affordable place to be. And even if all of these bond issues have passed, we're talking roughly $160 increase on a $100,000 home. The median home price here, I think, is a little under $94,000. So, some homeowners are going to be impacted much less than $160 a year, and some around $160, some much more than that. But still, that even with that factored in, we're still a very affordable place to live. And all this fear mongering, this is the thing that's driven me crazy the most, is all this fear mongering about, well, if we pass all these bond issues, people are going to flee Wichita Falls. They're going to sell their homes and move out of here. No, they're not. No, they're not. They're just not going to do that. If a 8-year-long drought didn't run you off, nothing is.
Exactly.
Okay? I mean,
I've
come
been
on.
called so many names during this campaign by people on the no side when I'll talk about my experience in economic development. I've been doing this for almost 20 years, and so I've visited with hundreds, if not thousands, of people over the years that were considering moving a company somewhere or some professionals that we were trying to recruit to move to a city, and they always want to talk about workforce, schools, housing, what type of housing are they going to be able to afford? What is there to do in the city and downtown? And not a single time, not one time has an individual asked me, what's your property tax rate? It doesn't happen. Now, they may research it online, but they never ask. And there's been this whole conversation on Facebook and around town about how property tax is the number one thing people look at, and it's just not the case. If we have high property taxes, but we have the workforce that's going to help a company do something and do it better than they can do it anywhere else in the country, they're going to come here. They're absolutely going to come here. And so it's just been really interesting, the perceptions versus the realities of this issue.
Yeah. Well, let's, again, we're recording this program before the vote actually happens. So it may have all passed. Maybe some did, maybe some didn't. We don't know yet. But assuming everything passed, let's just fantasy world here. Everything's passed. All 7 passed with flying colors. Then Monday morning, what begins? What's the next step?
Well, I can tell you this: the city staff would be working on every single one of those propositions. I've already talked to city manager about it, and that's what he told me. And a lot of people have been asking him that question. He said, look, we're ready to go on all these projects. And so whether it would be permitting that was involved or getting ready to talk to property owners or engineering the trail connectors or whatever it is, they're ready to start working. And our city's got very professional staff in planning and permitting and the management team and all that. And so I have no doubt that they're not going to be sitting back. Whatever passed, if anything passed, they're going to be on it immediately.
Right. And the time, I can't speak to the timeline on each one of these projects. I mean, some of them are going to be quicker than, like the trail, the circle trail thing. That's pretty close to complete already. So that won't take a long time to complete. Lake Wichita Park improvements, the Vietnam Memorial, that's probably not going to take a very. I know the Vietnam Memorial that's planned, the statue that's planned, the mold is ready for that, isn't it?
Right.
We're just waiting on the money to build it.
Yeah, exactly. The Daughters of the American Revolution did a great job raising money for this statue, and so we need a place to put it now.
Right.
And with all these projects, the timing, I don't know that we'd see a whole lot of construction in 2018 because you've got a lot of engineering work and design work that's got to be done.
Yeah.
But I'm sure by early 19, we'd start seeing progress on all these things. And one of the things that the Chamber's going to do, we launched fallsfuture.com as a resource to voters during this campaign, but we're going to keep that site active to be able to update Wichitans on those projects and on anything else that's going on as well. So we've just launched this new plan for growth for Wichita Falls. We're going to keep everybody posted on that new strategy and what we're doing within it and these propositions and whatever's coming up so people can look and see what's being planned for the future. I
know at some point, we've talked about this before, at some point you kind of expect you're going to sit down with the Wichita Falls ISD and talk about the future plans for schools here. And I've been back and forth on this for years now with on my show and with multiple people about, do we build one school? Do we build two schools? And I've become a proponent for the two school model because I think that's the only one that a majority of Wichitans are going to accept is the two school model, not the one. But they really haven't. The school district hasn't come to the chamber yet and said, "Hey, we've got a plan we want to talk to you about." They're still kind of molding their ideas, aren't they?
They are, and they've been conducting some focus groups lately. Yeah. But it's been more focused on what do you want to get out of the classroom, not just about facilities.
Right.
And so we're about to start having those conversations. One of the catalysts in our new plan is modern school facilities.
Yeah.
And the way that plan will work in general is that we need to go gather feedback from the community, whether that's focus groups or an online survey or whatever it is, about what does the community really want and what will they support in an election, and then provide that info to the school district and say, hey, listen, just like we did with the CEC Center, this is what the citizens and our chamber membership has told us, and we'll help you advocate for this if this is what you bring forward as a proposal at some point. Right. And so, frankly, it makes it easier on the ISD when we can provide that sort of information, because otherwise they spend tons of time coming up with something that they think is a good idea, but if the voters aren't going to go for it, then it's just all a waste of time. It is a wasted exercise.
One of the discussions I've had with people is, where would you build these new schools at? Do you just stay in the same general area that you're in now, or do you? And there are proponents out here for building these things closer to highways like Kell, so that they're more visible.
Yeah, think about all the little towns you drive through, just going from here to Dallas, and the new schools that you see right off the interstate. And when you see something like that, it's just like downtown. You see a city that's got a revitalized downtown with nice streetscapes, or you see a city that's got brand new schools. You just assume that city has got it figured out. And so there's certainly something to be said for that. It all depends on, is land available and at what cost?
Yeah, it's all about marketing your city.
Yeah, it is.
And that's one of the things that, I mean, I grew up here, and in all these years, I've not seen our city government, community as a whole, do things that really elevates the image of the city. And that's how I'm looking at these bond proposals, is we're trying to elevate the image of the city. It's a marketing tool, and that's how the schools are going to be. They're going to be a marketing tool.
No, it's an opportunity.
Yeah.
It's absolutely an opportunity. So it's just like the Proposition D.
Yeah.
If you're going to be doing something, if you're going to be building a school, why not do it where it helps you achieve some other goal as well, which could be marketing the community. And that was the whole idea with Prop D, with the preferred site that the city had picked was, well, that could help us really kickstart our downtown development efforts too, not just get us a new facility, which is sorely needed. And so I get that the ISD's goal is not necessarily the marketing of the community, but if this community grows, then we get more students as well, and the ISD can grow and have more resources to do things. And so I think the leadership is willing to listen, and I've reached out to Mike Kurt just to get together and talk about their plan and what they're currently doing with the workshops and the focus groups, and they plan to do with that, and then talk about facilities and where we head in the future.
I was at the Falls Future Forum, and Kurt and several school board members were sitting at a table right behind us. And I was watching their reaction to what was going on the screen. And you could tell, I mean, you made an impression on them. I think you made an impression on everybody in the room. That was a very good event, very well done.
Thank you.
And very informative, very educational. And I was watching their reactions during the presentations, and I could see, okay, their wheels are turning while they're watching all of this. You could hear the wheels cranking in their head while they're watching.
I'm getting this sense of togetherness more in Wichita Falls than I have in the 4.5 years that I've been here.
Yeah.
The campaign itself notwithstanding.
Yeah.
When I got here, the feeling was that downtown, and this is the way people around the city felt, downtown is just for those people that are down there.
Right. That
the school district was just worried about themselves and not where they fit in the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And on and on. And I don't feel that anymore. I think downtown's a great example. I think people have embraced the idea of downtown, and the downtown folks have realized, okay, we've got a much bigger role to play than just supporting the people that are here, because the city will live and die based upon that and based upon schools. And so the district understands that as well. We've got good relationships with the school board and the administration. And so I think it's time to really figure out, how do we gather everybody together and then really move forward.
Someone made a great point. A caller made a great point on my show last week about Lake Arrowhead. Back in the 60s, when that lake was about to be built, and they did some kind of bond issue toward that as well, to acquire the land and build the lake. And there was this massive opposition to it. It was going to be too expensive. It wasn't worth the investment. It was going to be a waste of time. All these different excuses people came up with. And this guy was here, lived here, and he's a supporter of these 7 propositions that we're talking about, have been talking about now on this ballot. And he said back then there were this large group of people that were just totally opposed to Lake Arrowhead. He said, now, you think anybody today is mad that we built Lake Arrowhead? Do you think anybody's upset about Lake Arrowhead now? Because where would we be as a community if we didn't have that reservoir?
Right. Change is hard.
Yeah.
It's very hard. Even with the things people really say that they want, like economic development.
Right.
Earlier this week, I posted an article about a deal that we just helped Sealed Air Corporation close with the 4A board and the city council to help keep one of the plants here and to modernize both of them in Wichita Falls and in Iowa Park. They're one of the biggest employers in the entire region.
Yes.
And because we're in the middle of this campaign and people were poking holes in every single thing that was going on, they started poking holes in that too. And so it's just that change is hard.
Yeah. Very, very hard.
And it doesn't matter what you say. If you're trying to change something, you're going to have some opposition.
Right. And
from a Chamber of Commerce's perspective, when I go to conferences with other chamber executives, we always talk about this. If you're not upsetting people, you're not pushing hard enough, because your community can always get better. Yeah. And we know that we've got some real opportunities for improvement in Wichita Falls. The challenge is it's real easy to oppose things. Sure. And it's real easy to get people riled up against change. It's much harder to pull people over to the side of positive, progressive change, especially when it's a real sea change from the way things used to be.
Right.
And that a good example is the way economic development used to work, with people following the jobs, as compared to today, when people actually consider the quality of life in terms of what city they're going to live in. Yeah. It's a hard change to make. And so throughout this whole campaign, we've been talking about things like downtown again, and people are saying, well, that won't bring a single person in. Well, on our show last week, we proved that it does, with the folks from Dexter and the talent they're able to start recruiting from big schools and big cities to move to Wichita Falls because of that quality of life. And so throughout the whole deal, that's just been a very difficult thing to get across to people. It's like, look, we can be that city.
Right.
We really can, but people have to change their way of thinking.
Well, as we draw more investment to downtown Wichita Falls, and you've got these buildings that have been empty, some of them for decades, that have just been sitting there, not utilized. And these properties get purchased, they get refurbished, rebuilt, revitalized, businesses move in, property values go up. And it's not just property tax and tax values that go up, but they also bring other business to town too. You see sales tax revenues go up. You see more commerce happening in the city all the time. as a result of the new stuff that's coming in. How's the saying go? Nothing draws a crowd like a crowd. As the crowd builds, more people get curious. Well, what's the crowd all about? And they start showing up in the crowd.
These things grow the pie.
Yeah.
A lot of people talk about, well, we got another restaurant. It's just going to compete with all the other restaurants. Well, no. Yeah. The more we have to offer and the more we have that people really want, the more people from out of town will come here and spend their money. The more people here will stay here and spend their money instead of leaving on the weekends. Right. And at the end of the day, the more people we can attract here, because the more stuff there is to do, the better quality of life you have. And so that goes for our recreational assets like the trail and the lake, and that certainly goes for downtown. And when you can build up vibrant assets like we're trying to do, it will absolutely attract workers. And once we're able to attract more workers, we can land more industry and other types of jobs that people are looking for. Right now, it's just so tight. It's a very difficult thing to do.
Well, obviously, we're seeing tremendous growth and have for years now nationwide in the tech industry. That's where so much of the future lies. And for Wichita Falls, aeronautics, technology, things like that. No, we're not going to go back to having the kinds of industry we had 50 or 60 years ago. Everything has changed now. And so what you're drawing is going to be brand new. But we've got all this great property downtown that could be utilized for all these purposes. And from the technology side, you don't need a lot of massive square footage, but you do need great location, and you do need to bring great people in. You need to bring the right talent in.
Yeah, it's the network. And what you need more than anything for that sort of talent to come in and start their own opportunity is you need that sort of community where they can come in and feel like they're part of something.
Right.
That's why downtown districts are important for that demographic. And you need living spaces downtown so they can stay there. The entire, this sort of person doesn't want to live across town and have to drive everywhere and drive to work and drive home. And so it's amazing all the progress we've made over the last few years has built up to this point to where now we can say that we've just recruited this guy, a bright young computer scientist from the University of Michigan that lived in San Francisco for a while, originally from Canada, and he has chosen Wichita Falls as his place to live. And he's now recruiting his colleagues to come do the same thing. Yeah. And so it's all about the environment, right? The experience.
Right.
What's it like living there? It doesn't matter if it's 1 million people or 100,000. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters other than what is it like to live there, and can I be part of that community? And today's Wichita Falls allows them to do that.
Yeah. And I've commented in the past, I don't think it's unreasonable to see our population grow to 130, 140, even 150,000 over a period of years. I mean, that growth doesn't happen overnight.
Sure.
You've seen some cities around the country that have seen big population explosions in short periods of time, but that's not really the norm, I don't suppose. But if we could grow our population over the next 10, 20 years by another 20,000 people, think about what that does to our tax base. Think about how that increases you're able to do more things. You're able to spread some of that burden out, and you're able to create more of your economy just becomes better.
No doubt.
It just does. When things are stagnant like we've been for so long, it's hard to grow anything. When the young people aren't staying, the young people aren't moving here from other places. And we've talked about this before. The only population segment we've got that's growing is the 55 plus crowd.
Right.
And these guys aren't going out looking for new jobs. They're retiring. These are the baby boomers and the ones just after them that now they're looking at retirement in 5 or 10 years. They're not looking for new careers.
Right. The only cities that have really just boomed in the past 10 or 20 years, there's some that are right outside of major metro areas. And so you look at places like Frisco and Plano and Denton and Louisville, because people are fleeing the metro area but still keeping the job in the area. Right. Or then you've got things like Midland, Odessa that's related to natural resources where people have to be in that particular city.
Right.
We're not going to grow to be 200,000 people. I can't tell you how many people during this campaign have said, well, that's stupid. We don't want to be like Dallas. Well, none of this stuff would make us be like Dallas.
No.
We don't want to be like Dallas, but we do want to be the best Wichita Falls we can be.
Right.
And that Wichita Falls is much better than we are today.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're trying to accomplish. We know we need to work on downtown. We know we need to work on schools. So we just got to do it and quit letting the no's dictate everything. But we've got to come up with plans that make sense as well and figure out how to communicate those to everybody so we get the support that we're looking for.
Well, if you want a Wichita Falls that your kids and your grandkids will want to live in 20 or 25 or 30 years.
Absolutely.
You got to do things today to make it worth it later on.
And my goal, and people have asked me, what's my goal for population? My goal right now is just to start growing.
Yeah.
I'd like to see 106.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've been at 104,553 just because the census count, right? They don't count every year. They do an estimate, but I'd like to see us start growing, period.
Yes.
Because otherwise I'm concerned that if we don't reverse this trend of losing our younger population, that the numbers are going to start to go down more. And we already know it's affecting the workforce. I'm concerned about the population count. And so these things will help us get there.
Yeah. Well, it's inevitable. If you don't start growing that younger population and retaining what you have and getting more to come here, you're going to go down. You're going to start to decline eventually.
Yeah, no doubt. Look at small. I don't consider us a small town. We're 100,000 people. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Look at the very small towns out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
If there's nothing to keep those kids there, those towns will die.
Right.
At some point. We've seen it happen a lot. And so that's not going to happen here because we've got enough of a population, but we need to grow so our community can provide more for the people that are here.
Well, Henry, if people have questions about jobs, about business, about anything at all related to the economy and the growth of the city, they can reach out to the Chamber of Commerce and get those answers.
That's right. You can always call me. Call the Chamber at 723-2741. Yeah. My email address is henry@wichitafallschamber.com. And we're going to keep fallsfuture.com active so we can update the citizens on these projects and many others that we'll be working on in our new plan for growth for the community. Right. And if you click the contact us link on that site at fallsfuture.com, that message will come to me as well.
All right, terrific. Well, you've been listening to The Voice of Wichita Falls, and I want to thank Henry for being here again. We'll be back with you again next week here on this Townsquare Media station. And, of course, remember, we're on YouTube as well. Share this with all your friends and your neighbors. Spread the word. And we'll be back next week with another program. Have a great week.